And it is written entirely from the perspective of a narrator who repeatedly refers to himself as Grandpa.
Which is quite the persona. So, our overarching mission for this deep dive is to chronologically untangle this manifesto.
Right.
We need to explore how this narrator, this grandpa figure, personifies his severe mental health struggles. We are going to track his progression from battling a literal, physicalized inner demon to dropping to his knees in earnest prayer.
It is quite the journey.
It is, and we will analyze the genius, the absurdity, and the really visceral imagery he uses to articulate his isolation.
We have to start with the immediate paradox I mentioned earlier, though, because it just slaps you in the face in the opening lines.
It really sets the tone.
It does. Grandpa kicks off this text by addressing his audience, who he derisively calls you kids.
Ah, yes, the kids.
Right. And he launches into this critique of modern youth culture, accusing them of hiding from the fact that their lives lack true meaning. He explicitly calls them out for scrolling of dooming, which is a great little twist on doom scrolling.
It's a very clever phrase.
Yeah. He says they have screens taped to their faces, sitting in their rooms, ruminating, using daydreaming as a convenient excuse to avoid feeling guilty about not contributing to the world.
It is the absolute archetype of the generational grievance.
Oh, 100%.
You know, the elder figure looking down from a perceived moral high ground, lambasting the youth for their reliance on technology. He's framing it as a moral failing rather than a societal shift.
But the irony is suffocating. Like, he is delivering this sermon about the emptiness of screens while desperately typing his soul into a screen, relying on an app to validate his existence.
It's completely contradictory.
It is. I look at this and I wonder, is he just a massive hypocrite? Or is there a genuine disconnect in his brain where he truly doesn't see himself as part of the digital culture he's attacking?
I think it is a profound psychological blind spot. Grandpa is an unreliable narrator, but not in the traditional sense where he's actively trying to deceive the reader.
Right, he's not scheming.
No, he is lying to himself. He requires the digital medium to externalize his pain. But to admit that he needs the screen would be to admit that he is just as lost as the kids he is criticizing.
Ah, that makes sense.
So he creates a psychological firewall. Like, their screen time is meaningless doom scrolling, but his screen time is the vital documentation of a profound, tortured soul.
Wow. And he attempts to bridge that gap by suddenly pivoting his tone. He goes from scolding the audience to almost begging for their attention.
A total 180.
Yeah, he writes, "So thank you first and foremost, up front for listening, for spending time listening to my stories and rhymes." And then, without any warning, he drops a massive emotional anvil on the reader.
And that emotional whiplash in this text, you know, it's a feature, not a bug.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he uses it to disorient the reader, making them more susceptible to his vulnerability.
That is exactly what happens. Because he tells these kids that the reason they need to listen is because someday, sooner than later, you're going to find, when I'm no longer existing, that you're actually physically and emotionally missing me.
Such a heavy line.
It's a gut punch. He jumps straight from a rant about smartphones into the terrifying reality of his own mortality.
Right, and consider the manipulative mechanics of that transition. In psychology, we often see this push-pull dynamic in individuals struggling with severe isolation or borderline personality traits.
How does that work?
Well, you push the audience away with harsh criticism, right?
Yeah.
You say, you kids are vapid, you don't understand the real world. This establishes dominance. But dominance doesn't cure loneliness.
Right, he's still alone.
Exactly. So immediately after pushing them away, you pull them back with an existential threat. He is weaponizing his own eventual death to compel an audience to pay attention to him now.
Oh, wow.
It is a desperate demand for relevance fueled by the absolute terror of being forgotten.
And it works, because it immediately raises the stakes. You suddenly realize this isn't just a grumpy old man complaining about the internet. This is a man who feels his time running out.
Exactly.
And acknowledging that his audience might not want to dwell on his death, he offers a distraction. He promises to tell a story about the demon inside his head that makes him curse and say awful things.
And this right here is the inciting incident of the narrative.
Okay, lay it out for us.
He introduces the mechanism of externalization. By separating his intrusive thoughts and toxic behaviors into a distinct entity, a demon, he absolves himself of immediate responsibility.
So it's not his fault.
Right. It is not Grandpa who is angry or bitter. It is the demon holding the microphone.
Which brings us to a specific story he titles No. The setup is wonderfully mundane, which makes the fallout so much funnier and sadder.
The contrast is brilliant.
It is. Grandpa takes a moment to explain his general philosophy, noting that most people are terrified of the word no, which turns them into chronic people pleasers.
A very common issue.
Yeah. But one day, his inner demon acts up. Grandpa asks this entity for a favor. And he goes out of his way to clarify that it wasn't a massive request.
Right, he's very defensive about that.
He writes that he wasn't asking to borrow his big toe or borrow his RV for a road trip, only to return it half smashed. It was just a minor everyday request for help.
And the demon's response is a single syllable.
The demon just says, no.
Just no.
And this single syllable completely, utterly destroys Grandpa. I need to unpack the logic here because it feels so disproportionate.
It does seem like an overreaction.
Right. You have to imagine having a parasitic roommate who lives rent-free in your apartment. They eat your food, they trash your living room, they keep you awake all night. They are an absolute nightmare.
The worst roommate ever.
Exactly. And one morning you simply ask them to pass the salt across the kitchen table, and they look you dead in the eye and say, no.
It's insulting.
But why is this the transgression that breaks Grandpa? He is hosting a literal demon of mental illness. But the deal breaker is a lack of basic etiquette.
Well, to understand why the word no shatters him, we really have to look deeply at the psychology of the chronic people pleaser.
Okay.
Later in the manifesto, Grandpa makes a devastating admission. He says, "It took a lot of hard work to make these things that kind of mess, yet I bend over backwards in the dirt just to make sure I tell you yes."
Bend over backwards in the dirt. The imagery there is so incredibly subservient.
It is.
It's not just helping someone, it's degrading yourself to accommodate them.
Precisely. A chronic people pleaser does not say yes out of sheer generosity. They say yes as a survival mechanism.
Wow.
Yeah, they believe their fundamental worth as a human being is entirely dependent on their utility to others. They preemptively abandon their own boundaries to avoid the perceived catastrophic rejection that would come from saying no.
So they never say no.
Right. So when someone else says no to them, it isn't just a denied request. It is a validation of their deepest fear. It confirms to them, I am doing everything for you, and I am still not worthy of your basic cooperation.
But he isn't talking to another person. He is talking to his own brain.
And that is the tragic brilliance of the moment. The demon is a manifestation of his own subconscious.
Oh, man.
The fact that his own inner demon, the very psychological construct causing his suffering, refuses to validate him is the ultimate insult.
His own mind refuses to people please him.
Exactly. It highlights the absolute bankruptcy of his coping mechanism. He can bend over backward in the dirt for the outside world, but he cannot negotiate basic compliance from his own neuroses.
It offends him on a cellular level. He writes that the demon acts all high and mighty, and Grandpa tries to take the moral high ground against his own hallucination.
Which is quite the image.
He retorts, at least I walk my talk, you couldn't dare walk in my shoes.
Hmm.
He is having an earnest, ego-driven argument with the air inside his own skull.
And it perfectly illustrates the sheer exhaustion of living with severe mental illness. I mean, a significant portion of his cognitive energy is spent negotiating treaties, fighting turf wars, and managing the egos of the various factions within his own consciousness.
And he is losing that turf war spectacularly, because the refusal of the demon triggers a cascade of intrusive thoughts.
It snowballs.
It does. Grandpa tries to explain the mechanics of his own mind, and he uses a phrase that is so evocative I feel like it should be in clinical textbooks. He describes his brain as a negative landfill.
A negative landfill. Let's really examine that metaphor.
Yeah, please.
A landfill is not just a place where things are placed. It is a place where discarded, toxic things go to rot, to compound, and to pollute the ground around them. It implies an accumulation of waste that is hidden away from society, but is actively decaying beneath the surface.
And he elaborates on this environment, saying that the thoughts in this landfill often get lost, but occasionally they pull a phantom.
Pull a phantom.
Yeah, he defines this as a thought appearing out of nowhere, entirely crude and random. He claims he can't even fathom where he comes up with this stuff.
It's the intrusive thoughts bubbling up.
Exactly. But then he delivers what might be the most self-aware, hilariously pathetic, and culturally resonant line in the entire document.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
You know the one. He admits that when people annoy him and make him pissy, he doesn't confront them. Instead, he simply adds the grievance to a mental list he calls the true history of my misery.
The true history of my misery. It sounds like the title of a Victorian Gothic novel.
It does. And what does he do with this grand Gothic list? He writes, then later today I'll update my Wikipedia page of fandom.
That sentence is just a masterpiece of modern psychological observation.
I'll update my Wikipedia page of fandom. It is so catchy, so meme-worthy, I honestly want it printed on a coffee mug.
It would sell well.
But beneath the humor, it is a staggering admission of how he curates his own victimhood.
Totally. Let's break down the mechanics of what he is actually saying there. What is a Wikipedia page?
A crowdsourced encyclopedia.
Right. It is an encyclopedic document of objective historical facts. By stating that his misery requires a Wikipedia page, he is attempting to elevate his subjective petty grievances, like someone making him pissy, into the realm of objective recorded history.
He wants it to be a fact.
Exactly. He wants his emotional pain to be treated as a documented, undeniable truth.
And the fandom aspect. The idea that there is an active community of fans eagerly refreshing the page to see the latest update on his bad day.
That addresses the modern phenomenon of digital victimhood. You know, in an increasingly isolated society where people feel powerless over their circumstances, much like Grandpa feels powerless against his demon, pain becomes currency.
Right.
If you cannot be successful or happy or connected, you can at least be the protagonist of a tragedy. Curating your suffering gives it structure.
That makes total sense.
If there is a fandom tracking your lore, then your pain isn't meaningless. It is content. It is narrative. He assumes an invisible audience because the alternative that he is suffering in total indifferent obscurity is too terrifying to accept.
He assumes he is the main character and the rest of us are just NPCs reading his lore.
Exactly.
But the text refuses to stay in this theoretical, metaphorical realm. As we move into the next phase of his manifesto, Grandpa radically shifts his approach.
This is where it gets very intense.
Very. The demon ceases to be a metaphor for a bad mood or an intrusive thought, and suddenly becomes a physical, tactile parasite navigating the actual organs of his body. We transition from a psychological diary to a bizarre, grotesque anatomy lesson.
And this shift is crucial for understanding the severity of his condition. We are witnessing the literary expression of a clinical concept known as somatic symptom disorder or somatization.
I want to pause and really dig into that because it feels like a massive leap.
It is a big leap.
How do we go from I have a negative landfill in my brain to there is a creature physically crawling through my chest cavity? What is the mechanism behind that?
Well, to explain somatization, we have to look at how the brain processes overwhelming emotional distress. When psychological pain, like trauma, severe anxiety, profound depression, when that exceeds the brain's capacity to process it emotionally, the nervous system essentially short circuits.
Like a blown fuse?
Exactly. The brain, struggling to articulate the invisible agony of the mind, translates that distress into very real, measurable physical sensations.
Yeah.
The amygdala, which processes fear, signals the body to initiate a physiological response. This can cause actual inflammation, severe muscle tension, gastrointestinal distress, and really sharp pains.
So his body is literally manufacturing physical pain because his brain can't handle the emotional pain.
Exactly. From an evolutionary standpoint, the brain prefers physical pain to emotional pain because physical pain is actionable.
Actionable.
Yes, if you have a broken leg, you know you need to rest and splint it. If you have an abstract, crushing sense of existential dread, there's no obvious action to take.
Right. You can't put a cast on dread.
Exactly. So the brain converts the dread into a stomach ache or chest pressure because that gives the sufferer a tangible enemy to fight. Grandpa is experiencing intense physical symptoms caused by his anxiety, but he lacks the clinical vocabulary to explain it.
He doesn't know the medical terms.
Right. Therefore, he creates a mythology. The chest pain isn't anxiety, it's a literal demon bumping into the walls of his ribs.
And he describes this hostile takeover so vividly. He says his inner brain and inner demons formed a gang, stealing the stage. He explicitly says he's not trying to play the victim, but he is trapped in the system.
He feels completely powerless.
He does. He says the demon is an asshole, running all around, bumping into walls and knocking. And because the pain has become physicalized, Grandpa decides the only logical response is physical retaliation.
He attempts to physically assault his own psychological symptom.
He literally tries to punch it. He writes that sometimes he will just go and sock him. He tries to hit the demon in the head.
It's incredible.
But the demon has adapted to this strategy. Grandpa notes that when he swings, the demon will suddenly play dead like an opossum.
The opossum defense. It's an incredibly astute observation of how the mind evades direct confrontation.
It sounds absolutely infuriating. You gear up for an epic battle with your inner saboteur, you throw a punch, and the enemy just goes completely limp.
You can't fight someone who won't fight back.
Right. You can't defeat passive resistance. It's like trying to win a boxing match against a wet towel.
That's a great way to put it.
So Grandpa is left seething. He resorts to yelling at the demon while he's trying to sleep, demanding the entity go back up to the brain and lay down. But the demon ignores him, stepping up his game. So Grandpa formulates a new offensive strategy. He issues a threat.
And this threat is memorable.
I need to prepare you for this because it is one of the most viscerally uncomfortable, violently creative, and deeply unhinged pieces of imagery I have ever encountered in a text like this.
It is a masterpiece of grotesque revenge fantasy.
Grandpa declares that two can play at this game. He plots to bide his time, wait for the perfect moment when the demon is off guard, and then he says he's going to piss him out the tip of my dick like a kidney stone.
It takes a moment to fully process the aggression in that statement.
I physically crossed my legs reading it. It forces a visceral wince.
It really does.
But what elevates it from mere shock value to dark comedic genius is the setup. He imagines the demon just sitting at home. I picture the demon in a tiny La-Z-Boy recliner somewhere in Grandpa's lower abdomen, wearing slippers, maybe reading a tiny newspaper, completely relaxed and off guard.
Very cozy.
And then suddenly, whoosh, immediate agonizing eviction via the urethra.
It really begs a fascinating analytical question, though. Why a kidney stone?
Right.
Of all the ways to imagine expelling a parasite, vomiting, coughing, bleeding, why select the passage of a kidney stone as the specific vehicle of vengeance?
My immediate thought is just the pure, unadulterated agony of it. It's universally recognized as one of the most painful bodily experiences.
It is about the pain, but it is also about the genesis of the object itself.
What do you mean?
A kidney stone is not an invading virus or a foreign body. It is a calcification of the body's own waste. It is created internally, much like his mental illness.
Oh, that's deep.
You harbor it, it crystallizes, and eventually it must be expelled. But here is the critical point. You have absolutely zero control over a kidney stone once it begins to move.
It's running the show.
Exactly. It dictates your reality. By threatening to pass the demon like a kidney stone, Grandpa is subconsciously acknowledging a terrifying truth about his own recovery. Getting rid of this mental illness is not going to be a peaceful, meditative transition.
No yoga and deep breathing here.
No. It is going to be an involuntary, agonizing, violent bodily trauma.
But he wants to weaponize that trauma against the demon. It's purely punitive.
But the tragedy of the metaphor is that it is a shared trauma. You cannot pass a kidney stone without experiencing the agony yourself.
Right, you're hurting yourself to hurt it.
Exactly. You cannot punish the demon without tearing up your own internal architecture. And Grandpa realizes this almost immediately.
He does. He follows up the threat by admitting that while it sounds funny in theory, it is not bodily because it batters me. He understands that to expel his darkness, he must be willing to endure immense suffering.
It's a lose-lose scenario.
It really is. And the physical escalation does not stop there. We move from the urinary tract up into the chest cavity. Grandpa describes how the demon occasionally sits on his ribs and fiddles with them.
Fiddles with his ribs.
Yeah, he plucks the ribs like the strings of a harp or a guitar, which Grandpa says tickles and makes him cough. Desperate to stop this internal concert, Grandpa decides to go fishing.
And we enter a deeply surreal, almost cartoonish phase of the narrative here.
It's very Looney Tunes, but with an undercurrent of severe distress. Grandpa constructs a miniature fishing pole. He drops the line down into his own chest cavity, trying to hook the demon.
Inside his own body.
Right. And he gets a bite. He writes that the demon takes the bait. But the victory is entirely hollow. The demon isn't trapped. Instead, the demon looks up at Grandpa and laughs in his face.
Why is he laughing?
Because, as Grandpa laments, the entire line's been twisted. The demon uses this twisted, knotted fishing line not as a trap, but as a climbing rope, shimmying up to pay Grandpa a visit and making him cough so violently he thinks he's dying.
I view the twisted fishing line as one of the most profound and accurate metaphors for the struggle of chronic mental health treatment in this entire document.
Really? How so? What does the fishing pole represent?
The fishing pole is his coping mechanism. It is his attempt to apply logic, intervention, or perhaps a therapeutic tool to cure his neuroses.
Okay, that makes sense.
He is actively trying to extract the problem. But the line is twisted. When a person is entrenched in severe long-term anxiety or depression, the cognitive tools they use to fight the illness often become corrupted by the illness itself.
Oh, wow. So the cure becomes part of the disease.
Exactly. It operates almost like a psychological autoimmune disorder. You try to use logic to rationalize your fear, but your anxiety twists that logic into hypervigilant paranoia.
That's terrifying.
It is. You try to use discipline to fight depression, and the depression twists that discipline into brutal self-punishment. The demon, the illness, takes the very tools you introduce to fight it, tangles them up, and uses them as a ladder to attack you from a new angle.
Your own coping mechanisms are weaponized against you.
Yes.
That is a devastatingly bleak reality. He tries to reel in his panic, and his panic just climbs the string and chokes him.
It's suffocating.
Grandpa seems to recognize the futility of it.
Yeah.
He calls it wishful thinking that he could ever catch the demon, and he makes a dark admission that failures like this make him go back to drinking.
Self-meditating.
Right. The failure of the internal psychological cure drives him directly toward an external chemical crutch.
And that cycle of failure, the constant exhausting battle against an enemy that knows your every move, it leads to total systemic burnout.
Exhaustion on every level.
He begins to question the nature of time, lamenting that the demon pretends to be friendly but is always quietly plotting the next attack.
Which perfectly sets the stage for my absolute favorite sequence in the entire document. This is the zenith of Grandpa's creative weirdness.
I love this part.
He is exhausted, he is nauseous, and he secretly harbors a plan to vomit the demon out. Again, returning to the theme of violent bodily expulsion.
Right.
But the demon anticipates this and pulls what Grandpa describes as some wild shit that's beyond rotten. You have to visualize the anatomy of this moment.
It's so vivid.
The demon uses the inside of Grandpa's ribcage as a literal ladder, climbing up the chest wall right beneath the breastplate. He reaches the top of the esophagus and finds the mouth.
And the anatomical mapping here is bizarrely precise. He is tracing the exact route of his own discomfort.
He is. The demon gets to the mouth, uses Grandpa's own saliva to slick down the surface of the tongue, and then he rides the tongue like a high-speed water slide,
Saliva water slide.
plummeting back down the throat and splashing into a pool of stomach acid pooling in his chest.
He has constructed a literal internal theme park out of his own gastrointestinal distress.
Yes, and the absolute kicker, the line that makes this so enduringly funny, is Grandpa watching this unfold inside his own body.
Oh,
He hates this demon, but he is secretly admiring the stunt.
he can't help it.
He admits, between me and you, it actually sounds like fun, albeit a wee bit rough in the green gunk.
The green gunk being the stomach acid.
Yeah. He is grudgingly impressed. He wants this entity dead, but he's watching it do a saliva water slide into a pool of acid and thinking, you know what? That little guy knows how to have a good time.
This specific passage is just a brilliant, absurd translation of what a severe panic attack actually feels like physically.
Walk us through that.
Let's map the demon's journey against clinical symptoms. Your heart begins to hammer violently against your ribs. That is the demon climbing the ladder of the ribcage.
Oh.
Your throat tightens and constricts, the demon maneuvering at the esophagus. You might experience a sudden rush of saliva followed immediately by severe acid reflux, burning chest pain, and intense nausea.
The plunge into the stomach acid pool.
Exactly. He is charting a full-blown autonomic nervous system meltdown.
Wow, yes. But look at how he frames it. What Grandpa has done is take a terrifying, paralyzing, borderline traumatic medical event, and he has rewritten it as a Pixar-esque joyride.
This is coping through absurdism.
Yeah.
If the searing pain in your chest is a failing heart or an encroaching death, it is paralyzing. If the pain is just a tiny, mischievous gremlin going whee down an esophagus water slide, it is somehow survivable.
It shrinks it down.
Right. It shrinks the terror into something manageable, even comical.
It makes an incredibly isolating experience wildly relatable. Anyone who has ever suffered from stress-induced acid reflux can suddenly picture this little menace treating their digestive tract like a Six Flags attraction.
It's brilliant.
But unfortunately for the demon, the amusement park is being shut down. Grandpa has reached his absolute limit. The physical toll of the acid and the coughing is too high.
Time for eviction.
He declares that the demon doesn't pay rent, calls him a fucking savage bitch who constantly plays devil's advocate, and officially issues an eviction notice.
Which forces a massive structural transition in the text and in his psyche.
How so?
Well, if the demon is successfully evicted, there is suddenly a psychological vacuum. In nature, particularly the human mind, abhors a vacuum. Something new must be brought in to fill the space.
Exactly. We cannot just have an empty apartment in Grandpa's head. So we transition into part 3. The heavy metal guardian angel.
A new character arrives.
Yes.
Yes.
Because the demon was a non-paying tenant causing physical havoc, Grandpa decides he needs a new roommate to help him navigate his recovery. He writes, "I'll put an angel on my back shoulder to spot or develop different angles."
He wants a guide.
He is seeking a guide that operates on pure, unobstructed intuition. But if you are picturing a serene cherub sitting on a fluffy cloud strumming a harp, you are completely misreading the vibe.
This is not a biblical messenger of peace. This is an entity of sheer unrelenting force.
Oh, totally. Grandpa describes this angel as intensely, almost frighteningly aggressive. He says she is zoomed in, possessing a hyper-focus that cuts straight through
A little
obstacles.
intense.
And her conflict resolution strategy.
Yeah.
If anyone is standing in her way, Grandpa warns that they need to go graze, be lazy in a haze, eating hay, grass, and daisies.
In other words, act like a cow and get out of the road.
Or you are going to get run over.
Yeah.
He gives us a bizarrely specific example, noting that she targets people taking crap 15 feet from his face, and declares that if she were driving, they'd be eating steak somewhere else.
Wow.
He summarizes her entire ethos with the phrase, "Move it, stupid."
The energy shift in the manifesto here is palpable. We have completely abandoned the passive-aggressive internal sabotage of the demon.
We're in a different gear now.
We really are. We have traded it for the external, manic, hyper-aggressive momentum of the angel.
The analogy that immediately jumps out at me is that Grandpa has essentially handed the keys to his life, his actual consciousness, over to a hyper-aggressive speeding Uber driver.
A perfect analogy.
He describes her arrival like a gunner. He hears a rumble like thunder. They are blasting heavy metal music. He says the way she steers gives him visceral fear.
He is terrified.
The speed is blistering, and they are driving with the windows down so fast that your eyes dry out until you are forced to cry. It is a terrifying ride.
It is so terrifying that he experiences a moment of profound buyer's remorse.
He does a complete double take. He is strapped into the passenger seat of his own life, white-knuckling the dashboard, wondering if he made a massive mistake.
Right.
He writes, "Almost makes me begin to second-guess if I'm glad that I met her. Perhaps the contract can be severed. Surely there's a loophole."
He is looking for a legal exit from his own guardian angel.
He wants to get out of the car.
He wants to dispute the terms of his salvation in a court of law. He is actively looking for a way out of his own healing process.
But he quickly realizes that if he tries to explain to a judge that his heavy metal angel is driving too fast, they won't grant him a loophole. They will rush him straight to psychiatric urgent care.
Which is a very valid fear.
So he accepts that he is trapped in this speeding vehicle. And to cope with the terror of this new reality, Grandpa delivers another one of those incredibly catchy poetic metaphors that just embeds itself in your brain.
I love this metaphor.
He has to rationalize why he is allowing this reckless driving to continue. And he uses his actual literal optometry prescription to justify it.
It is a stunning piece of poetic logic. It bridges the physical flaw with the psychological necessity perfectly.
It really does. He writes, "I've already got a perfect clear vision for my vision, where I figure if I'm wearing contact lenses, because my vision prescription is 2.0 near."
2.0 near.
He is establishing that he is naturally nearsighted. He can only see things that are right in front of his face. Everything in the distance is blurry.
Okay.
He reasons that when you are flying at blistering speeds with an aggressive angel, the blur is actually disarming. You have no fear of what's coming because you can't see it anyway.
Ignorance is bliss.
Exactly. And then he drops this philosophical hammer of a line. He says, "Who really needs to see clear?"
Who really needs to see clear? That is not just a throwaway rhyme.
No.
No, that is a profound statement on the necessity of surrendering control during the recovery process.
I really want you to unpack that mechanism, because on a surface reading, it just sounds like a massive cop-out.
I can see why you'd say that.
It sounds like he's saying, I don't know where I'm going, I can't see the road, so whatever, Jesus, take the wheel, let's crash. Is it just fatalism?
It is the opposite of fatalism. It is radical acceptance.
Right.
Think deeply about the transition he is attempting to make here. For years, he has been held hostage by the demon.
Right.
The demon, his anxiety, his depression, his somatization, it kept him entirely stagnant. It kept him trapped in the negative landfill of his own brain. And in that stagnation, his vision was actually too sharp.
Too sharp.
Yes, he saw every minor slight, every petty grievance, every tiny physical ache with agonizing, microscopic clarity. He saw the threads of the twisted fishing line perfectly.
His proximity to his own pain gave him perfect vision of his misery.
Precisely. Now, he is attempting to heal. He is trying to generate forward momentum. He brings in this angel, which represents decisive action, raw intuition, and relentless forward movement.
But it's scary.
But when a human being is healing from deep entrenched trauma, when they finally begin to move after years of paralysis, the sheer velocity of that change is terrifying.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The scenery of their life is flying by. The future is entirely unknown. The cure, this aggressive push out of his comfort zone, can actually feel significantly scarier than the familiar disease.
Because the disease was predictable. The demon was an asshole, but he was his asshole.
Exactly. What Grandpa is articulating with his 2.0 near metaphor is the realization that sometimes when you're trying to escape a dark place, you do not need to see the distant destination clearly.
You just need to go.
Demanding perfect clarity of the future will only paralyze you again. You just need to trust the momentum. He is willingly trading the slow, crystal-clear poison of the demon for the terrifying, blurry velocity of the angel.
Wow.
He is accepting that healing doesn't require a perfect map. It just requires moving fast enough to escape the gravity of the past, even if the windshield is a complete blur.
That's incredibly profound. He's basically saying, I don't need to see the horizon, I just need to cross the city limits.
Beautifully said.
And he genuinely believes he's in good hands with her. He calls her a graceful guardian angel, crediting her with restoring his hope after he spent years being choked by that twisted fishing line rope.
He feels saved.
He recognizes, in hindsight, that he was dangling from puppet strings controlled by the devil. But here is where the narrative hits a harsh, unyielding brick wall.
The real world.
Yes. We move into part 4. While this epic, mythological battle between demons and heavy metal angels is raging at blistering speeds inside his skull, Grandpa still has to wake up and exist in the actual physical world.
And that's the tricky part.
In the year 2025.
Yeah.
And that reality leads to immense, dangerous friction with society.
Because the external world does not speak the language of his internal mythology. And when internal mythology clashes with clinical reality, the results are often punitive.
To him, he is undergoing a profound spiritual eviction and a high-speed journey of salvation. To his family and his doctors, he is just a man acting erratically. He complains that it was impossible to find help from his completely useless peers. And this isolation breeds a very real, very dark, and highly specific paranoia about what his family will do to him.
He's afraid of them.
He is terrified they will throw him in a home. He imagines them going to a doctor, explaining that Grandpa is acting strange, specifically because he claims to have a doppelganger.
Notice the clinical terminology the family uses in his imagination. They call it a doppelganger. They interpret his metaphor as a literal hallucination.
Right. And Grandpa gets incredibly defensive about this misunderstanding. He argues, this ain't no clone that what you and I know. No, it's literally the devil living in the shadows upstairs.
Which doesn't really help his case.
Not at all.
Sure.
He is trying to correct their terminology, not realizing that telling a doctor it's not a clone, it's the literal devil in my brain, is not going to keep him out of the hospital.
Definitely not.
But he is shrewd. He knows how the system operates. He knows his family will leverage this to get him put away because he ain't coming back to theirs.
And this paranoia culminates in an emotional gut punch that completely grounds the text. It strips away the poetry to reveal the grim, bureaucratic reality of mental health care.
He issues a desperate, almost whispered warning to the reader about the system.
It is a stark, pragmatic break from the rhyming and the metaphors. It is pure survival advice.
He warns his audience, the kids, not to casually repeat his words, lest they get twisted by the authorities. Yeah. He writes, all it takes is one slip of the tongue saying, I want to hurt myself.
The magic words for a psych hold.
Right. He frantically clarifies that when he talks about violence, he means purging the curse, not a literal desire for self-harm. But he knows the system doesn't deal in metaphor.
No, it doesn't.
And then he highlights a second, seemingly innocuous phrase that will instantly trigger the trapdoor. He says you must never admit, I ain't been taking care of myself or my home.
And what does he believe is the consequence of uttering those specific phrases?
Immediate loss of freedom. He says they will lock you up for weeks, months, or, as he chillingly predicts later in the text, in a hospital for half a decade, inpatient.
Half a decade?
He describes his current state of mind living under this threat as feeling like he is burning deep in hell. He drops the rhymes entirely to just say, every minute I'm awake, I wish I could just sleep for days and have you guys all wake me up once the situation has changed.
That is the sound of sheer, unadulterated exhaustion.
It's not funny anymore. It's not a water slide. It's desperation. I want to ask you about this fear because he sounds paranoid, but is he wrong? Is his fear of the psych ward a common barrier to treatment?
It is one of the most significant, valid, and pervasive fears among individuals with severe mental illness.
Really?
Yes, the fear of losing bodily and legal autonomy. When Grandpa interacts with the medical system, he ceases to be a human being undergoing a spiritual crisis. He becomes a liability.
A box to check.
He becomes a checklist of symptoms and a risk profile to be managed. The psychiatric system operates on risk mitigation, which philosopher Michel Foucault famously termed the clinical gaze.
The clinical gaze.
The system does not look at you, it looks through you to find the pathology.
So if he uses his poetic metaphors, the system weaponizes them against him.
Exactly. If he says, the devil is making me do it, he is speaking poetically about his intrusive thoughts.
Yeah.
But the system writes down, experiencing auditory hallucinations and psychosis.
Wow.
If he expresses the deep burnout of depression by saying, I haven't been cleaning my room, the system writes down, gravely disabled, inability to care for self.
That's terrifying.
Grandpa is terrified because he knows that the moment he seeks professional help, his words will be stripped of their context and he could be stripped of his freedom, locked in a sterile room for years. He fears that the clinical cure will be vastly more traumatic than the disease.
He is so tired of being burnt by this system. He admits he feels the Reaper is coming to get him quickly. The desperation peaks when he says he wouldn't even be picky about how he escapes.
What does he mean?
He says he would gladly take being cryogenically frozen or put into a medically induced coma just to be awakened when either the world has changed or his curse is lifted. Because, as he notes, living in this current reality is a big mistake.
And this profound paranoia naturally breeds total social isolation. I mean, if you cannot trust your family and you cannot trust the doctors, you retreat inward.
Which brings us to his intense social exhaustion. He looks out at the world from his isolated bunker and he's disgusted by what he sees.
He hates the modern world.
He is frustrated with what he calls fake people. He rants about a society that prioritizes cheap distractions and YouTube reactions.
It goes back to his initial rant about the kids.
Right. He mocks people who stress themselves out trying to impress neighbors they haven't even met, chasing the illusion that the grass is always greener. He dismisses these people as fake, comparing them to snakes, and declares he doesn't need their validation.
He is isolating himself even further.
And to summarize this cultural rot, he uses an incredible piece of wordplay. He says, we're focusing on an external locus of control, like locusts, slowly eating away at your actual soul.
External locus of control, like locusts. It is arguably the most brilliant linguistic turn in the entire manifesto.
It is absolute poetry. He takes a dry psychological concept, the external locus of control, which is the belief that outside forces dictate your life, and mashes it up with the biblical plague of locusts.
It paints this tragic cinematic image of Grandpa.
It really does. He is running on fumes. He admits he is amazed he even musters the energy to leave his trashed bedroom. When he does step through the doorway into the real world, he says he feels like a species from some other planet. He claims he'd rather gouge his own eyes out than stare at the same mundane shit in 2025. But I have to stop right here.
Okay.
I have to push back on Grandpa, and I want to challenge your reading of him too.
Please do. Let's interrogate the text.
Because immediately after this poetic complaint about locusts, he goes on this vicious rant about the word fine.
Oh, the fine rant.
He absolutely loathes when people ask how it's going, and someone just responds with, fine. He says it doesn't matter if you have a roof over your head, food on the table, or a partner, fine was the magic line.
He gets very angry here.
He doesn't just dislike it, he attacks the people who use it. He says he feels like a doofus because fine is just a cop-out, utilized by life's many biggest fucking losers who are stuck and abuse their minds, then complain they got the blues when they did it to themselves.
That's harsh.
He compares saying fine to jumping without a parachute and wondering why. Well, here's my challenge. Is he just being a massive hypocritical jerk here?
It sounds like it.
Right. Why is he being so incredibly vitriolic toward other people who might just be using the word fine to survive a Tuesday? He is struggling so deeply himself, hiding in his room, yet he has zero empathy for the cashier or the neighbor who says, I'm fine, instead of trauma dumping on him. Why the intense hatred for a polite social fiction?
Your frustration is entirely justified because on the surface, it is a hateful, hypocritical rant. But if we reframe this through the lens of psychoanalysis, we aren't looking at a critique of society.
What are we looking at?
We are looking at a textbook, devastating example of psychological projection.
Explain the mechanism of projection here. How is his hatred of fine actually about him?
Well, Carl Jung argued that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves.
Okay.
When we despise a trait in the external world with a disproportionate, irrational level of rage, it is almost always because our subconscious recognizes and loathes that exact trait within our own psyche.
Oh, I see.
The ego cannot handle the shame of that flaw, so it ejects it outward, projecting it onto other people so it can be safely attacked.
Like using them as a scapegoat.
Exactly. Look closely at the specific accusations Grandpa levels at these fake people. He says they did it to themselves, that they put themselves through hell, that they abused their own minds.
Right.
Now, cross-reference that with the rest of the manifesto. Who allowed the demon to ride a water slide down his esophagus? Who handed the steering wheel of his life over to a reckless, heavy metal angel? Who surrendered his autonomy to the negative landfill?
He did.
He did. He jumped without a parachute into the chaotic mythology of his own mind, and now he is wondering why he fell from grace.
Man.
He attacks the word fine because it is his own mirror. When his family asks how he is doing, what word do you think he uses to mask the fact that his bedroom is trash and he feels like an alien?
He says he is fine.
He hates the word because it is the shield he uses to hide his own cowardice. He is projecting his deep, agonizing shame about his failing life onto an imaginary society of snake people.
That is so sad.
It is infinitely easier to rage at YouTube reaction culture than it is to look at your own ruined bedroom and take accountability.
Man, that is sobering. He isn't yelling at society. He's screaming into a mirror.
Exactly.
And I think somewhere deep down in his core, he feels that truth. Because that subconscious realization of his own ultimate failure is what triggers the transition into part 5. Rock bottom, mortgages, and the whiplash finale.
The grand finale.
He admits in the text that he is down at rock bottom for the first time in a while. And what does he do when the anger burns out? He physically surrenders. He writes, I'm on my knees to pray to the powers that be in Oliswin. Hope someone will just listen to me.
It is the moment of ultimate reduction. We strip away the internal demons, we strip away the heavy metal angels, we strip away the opossums, the twisted fishing lines, the locusts, and the grand generational grievances.
All noise is gone.
Right. We are left with nothing but a broken, terrified man kneeling on the floor of a trashed room.
And his prayer, his earnest prayer to the universe, is so profoundly moving, precisely because of how incredibly beautifully normal it is.
It really is.
After thousands of words of chaotic, psychedelic, violent poetry, I want you to listen to what Grandpa actually asks God for. He doesn't ask for superpowers. He doesn't ask to conquer the world.
No, he doesn't.
He writes that he wants a wife. He wants the feeling of coming home to someone. He wants to feel protective of a family, as if I was on patrol.
He is asking for biological and sociological purpose.
Right. And then he outlines a highly specific 4-step plan to get his life back on track.
A very practical plan.
Step 1, get up off the floor. Step 2, find a pot to piss in. Step 3, go back to school and gain some wisdom. And step 4, and this is where that brilliant self-deprecating humor sneaks back in to break the tension. He prays to get a haircut so I don't look like I ride the short bus.
It is heartbreakingly practical.
It truly is. He begs the Lord to settle his spirits and, in a moment of stunning vulnerability, asks God to uncover this love that for years I have feared.
Such a beautiful line.
He admits that his isolation was driven by a fear of love. He wants to find a spark that ignites his life instead of shorting out his nervous system. He asks God to show him something gorgeous.
It's a genuine plea for connection.
And then he delivers the ultimate punchline of his spiritual pleading. The absolute climax of his prayer. He says, now if I could just fix my credit score and place a down payment on a mortgage.
A credit score. And a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage.
I burst out laughing when I read that. After waging an epic mythological war against demons and angels, he just wants to appease the Equifax Credit Bureau so he can qualify for a loan.
It is funny, but it is also the most revealing line in the entire document. It perfectly crystallizes the central tragedy of Grandpa's existence.
Loso.
Beneath the neuroses, beneath the complex defensive mythologies he has built to rationalize his isolation, what does he actually desire? He desires the most basic, mundane iteration of the American dream.
Just a normal life.
He wants a suburban home, he wants a partner, he wants financial stability, he wants to be a functional, participating member of the societal fabric.
But he's so far from it.
Exactly. Look at the chasm between his current reality and that dream. The distance between sitting in a trash bedroom hallucinating demons and sitting in a bank office signing escrow papers for a mortgage feels so impossibly vast. It's so entirely uncrossable that his brain had to invent a war between heaven and hell just to explain why he hasn't achieved it yet.
That is exactly it. It is psychologically easier to fight a demon than it is to fix a credit score.
Precisely. One is an epic mythical struggle that makes you the tragic hero of your own story. The other is just tedious, unglamorous, frustrating adult responsibility.
Yeah.
A demon gives you an excuse. A credit score gives you a task.
And the very moment he realizes this, the moment he confronts the crushing, mundane reality of the tasks ahead of him, his faith instantly wavers.
He panics.
He suddenly doubts God's intentions. He worries his soul is still fucking questioning. He begins to spiral, imagining that God is looking down from the clouds and mocking his pathetic prayer, saying, oh, you want to mess with me? Well, I'm going to send karma out to kick your ass. He always gets the last laugh.
The paranoia returns.
It does. This spiral of anxiety leads to one of the most bizarrely philosophical, time-bending lines in the whole piece. He writes, time is not finite, meaning it's not infinite, which makes it priceless, and time cannot be borrowed.
Time is not finite, meaning it's not infinite. It is a logical paradox, but emotionally it conveys a sense of crushing urgency.
He feels the clock ticking.
He realizes, in a flash of terrible clarity, that he has squandered the prime years of his life fighting phantoms in his own mind. Time is running out.
It is the heaviest realization a human being can have. So let's set the stage for the finale. Let's really paint the picture of this exact moment.
Okay, let's set the scene.
Grandpa's on his knees. He has just poured his absolute soul out to the universe. He has confronted his demons. He has survived the heavy metal angel. He has navigated his terror of the psych ward. He has admitted his desperate, aching desire for a family, love, and a simple mortgage.
He is fully exposed.
He is staring directly into the abyss of his own mortality, philosophizing about the priceless nature of time. He looks up to God and says, if I just save up, I'll have plenty of energy to handle this tomorrow.
The classic, fatal procrastination of the overwhelmed mind.
But then, the tension is at its absolute peak, and he completely abandons the profound spiritual moment. He delivers a tonal whiplash so severe, it almost snaps your neck as a reader.
It really does.
I'm going to quote the exact pivot, word for word.
Go ahead.
He writes, fuck, you know what? Can I get a bit of privacy instead of you looking down, always eyeing me? I'll just hop on Pornhub for a quick rub.
It is, without a doubt, the most jarring tonal shift imaginable in a piece of literature.
I sat in stunned silence when I read it. We went from Lord, uncover this love that I have feared to, can God please leave the room so I can pull up Pornhub? It is absolute mind-bending whiplash.
We have to slow down and sit with this moment because it is the philosophical core of the entire manifesto.
Really, the core.
Yes, it is the ultimate act of self-sabotage, and it demands deep psychological analysis. Think about the sequence of events that just occurred. He brought himself to the very edge of revelation. He dropped to his knees, he bypassed his ego, and he genuinely committed to the idea of change. He laid out the steps to rebuild his life.
He was right there.
But then he felt the actual weight of what that change would require. Rebuilding a credit score, going back to school, facing society, exposing himself to the terror of love. Those things require sustained, painful, unglamorous effort.
It's the twisted fishing line. It's a kidney stone. He realizes that actually healing is going to hurt worse than the disease.
Exactly. And right at the precipice of doing that hard work, he balks. He opts out.
He just gives up.
He immediately pivots from a plea for divine salvation to the pursuit of instant base dopamine gratification. It is the tragedy of the modern human condition distilled into two crude sentences. Why do the agonizing months-long work of confronting your inner demons, cleaning your trashed room, and rebuilding your financial life when you can just open a browser tab on your phone and flood your neural pathways with cheap, unearned dopamine?
He literally kicks God out of his bedroom so he can masturbate. It is so incredibly crass, but it perfectly loops back to the very first paragraph of the manifesto.
It does.
He started this entire document by aggressively critiquing the kids for having screens taped to their faces, running from their meaningless lives through doom scrolling. And how does his epic journey end? With him staring at a screen, running from his own painful epiphany by numbing himself with digital porn.
The circle is complete. The hypocrisy is absolute, but it is also utterly, tragically human. He is a victim of the exact same digital pacification he warned us about.
Right.
When the pain of reality becomes too sharp, the screen offers an immediate anesthetic. He chooses numbness over growth.
And he knows he's beaten. He wraps up the text right there. He writes, And with that, I think this is a good place to leave off. I think I have said and done enough. Plus, I think I might have places to be.
Which we know is a blatant lie.
Totally, because he has just established he is hiding in his bedroom, and then he delivers his final exit line. Since Grandpa's old, you really need to leave Grandpa alone, complete with a little monocle emoji at the end.
It is the final defense mechanism. He demands an audience, forces us to bear witness to his deepest traumas and his ultimate failure, and then smugly slams the door in our faces to preserve whatever fragment of ego he has left.
It is incredibly frustrating, but structurally it is brilliant. So let's pull all of these threads together. We have journeyed through the negative landfill. We have witnessed a masterclass in how the human mind attempts to make sense of its own severe dysfunction through humor, mythology, and deeply visceral imagery.
It's quite a trip.
We tracked the anatomy of a panic attack on a saliva water slide. We rode shotgun with the heavy metal momentum of a guardian angel. And we felt the crushing weight of a man whose ultimate fantasy is simply qualifying for a mortgage.
It is a profound, messy document of a mind at war with itself, desperately trying to map a battlefield that exists entirely within its own skull.
So, to you listening right now, I want you to consider your own internal narratives. We all have a Wikipedia page of fandom where we secretly curate our miseries, don't we?
We certainly do.
Do you have an inner demon that you're allowing to ride the water slide of your anxiety? Are you relying on a heavy metal angel to drag you forward when maybe you just need to stop and get your vision checked? Are you using the word fine as a magic line to hide the fact that you jumped without a parachute?
These are the uncomfortable questions Grandpa forces us to ask ourselves, even as he actively runs away from answering them himself. And that leads to a final thought I want to leave you with today.
What's that?
Grandpa spends his entire manifesto blaming a literal demon for his misery, and he relies entirely on an imaginary angel for his salvation. But notice how both of those mythical entities conveniently absolved him of all personal responsibility.
Wow, yeah.
The very moment he faces his reality, the moment he realizes he has to do the hard, boring work of fixing his credit score and changing his habits, he opts out for the easiest digital distraction available.
The screen.
So what does it say about us, about our modern condition, that it is often so much easier to wage an epic mythological war against demons and angels inside our own heads than it is to simply clean our trash bedroom and walk out the front door?
That is a remarkably heavy thought to leave on. That is exactly why we do this. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the wilderness of the digital mind. Keep untangling those twisted fishing lines in your own life. Try your best to keep the green dunk to a minimum. And remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can possibly do isn't fighting a demon. Sometimes it is just putting down the screen, stepping out of the curated museum of your own excuses, and facing the untamed mess of your actual life. We will catch you next time.